Hi. It's a hell of a time to be an American, isn't it? Watching things just fall apart. I can hardly stand it, but this is our country, and people have had to fight for it before, and fighting for it is pretty much what I want to talk about. There are a lot of things that have come together recently that sort of help paint a picture of what's missing in this picture. For example, I put in the title "Wray surrenders." So that's one thing that we've got is that he he stepped down effective at the end of the Biden administration to clear the way for Trump to violate the rule of law. Um, I got stuff to say about that. The other thing that swimming in my head is the murder of the UnitedHealthCare CEO, but more particularly what we've witnessed in the reaction of a great many Americans to that particular murder. It was sort of reminiscent of the gratifications that people got years ago for a death wish when the problem that was avenged by a vigilante wasn't, the healthcare situation in America. Uh, it was street crime, muggings, and thugs running around in the big city. But there's something similar to be learned. I think there are connections to be made here. To where we are as America right now, and the implications of that about how we might fight more successfully to restore some of the things that are getting destroyed in this country. And then there's a third thing, which is an email statement from Bulwark, from particularly the fellow named JVL, who wrote a piece that's very good at some levels, but also seems to miss the possibilities that we can have some of the strength that we're witnessing somebody like Donald Trump possess. Strength to do more damage than anybody's ever done to this country. We can combine that with virtue in a way that he doesn't seem to quite envision. He represents it as a choice. And anyway, his email had a subject line which captures a big piece of this. Americans don't want progress. They want punishment. Not meaning they want to get punished. They want punishment to be meted out to the people against whom they are enraged. I kind of know how to weave these together, but one thing I don't know is in this medium, do I try to do it all at once, or do I do a series of videos? I'm told that if I do something that's long, because I don't have the Joe Rogan standing, people won't want to listen to what goes too long. But on the other hand, I don't have the technical ability to sort of set things up so that people can go through the sequence of the shorter things. But let me just do what I can do as an old man in a new medium. So, Christopher Wray, I'm going to imagine basically the story. It's a 10-year term. He has 3 years yet left to run. An FBI director isn't supposed to be terminated without cause. I don't think it's legally binding, but I don't really know the details. And it wasn't really kosher what Trump did to can Jim Comey and then appoint Christopher Wray. But here he's doing, and it's quite clear that he's firing Christopher Wray because as FBI director, he did his job. When the court authorized a search of Mar-a-Lago, which, by the way, found the incriminating evidence that was in the search warrant. The FBI went and did it. Trump calls it an invasion or a raid. It's not that. It's the rule of law working the way it's supposed to. Trump cannot tolerate anything like the rule of law overriding his will. I mean, this is the ugly thing. This is a man who's dominating, is what he's all about. It's just it. And it is completely antithetical to the human good to have a guy like that ruling. That's it. That's fascism versus democracy, which is the heart of this battle. So we've all been following how Trump's been talking about he wants to replace Christopher Wray. And he talks his usual BS about why and what happened, and he just says whatever he damn pleases, and the country sort of learned to accept that he's going to define the reality. The reality is that Christopher Wray acted with integrity, even when that required him to oversee from a distance a search that revealed the most open and shut case of Donald Trump committing felony crimes against the federal government. For that, he's going to not be allowed to fulfill his term, and so you know that he decided to clear the way, since obviously he's under the gun. He's going to just not require Trump to fire him. He's going to resign. He says that's to help to keep the FBI above the fray. The FBI is smack dab in the middle of the fray. What he's done is essentially surrender the fray. Why is that happening? It's not like Christopher Wray is the first person we've seen not stand up and fight. And one thinks in another realm altogether of the owner, Amazon guy, Jeff Besos. He surrendered by saying, we're not going to put out something calling for endorsing Kamala Harris, because we know that this vindictive guy is going to use the powers of the presidency in a way we've not seen before in our history, that he would punish a company for exercising its constitutional rights, a publishing company. And so a lot of people observing what Christopher Wray did. I think of Richard Blumenthal, for example, my classmate from Harvard class of '67. I'm glad to see that he's in good shape and keeping his marbles. Anyway, he says, and various other people have been saying, they wish that he had required Donald Trump to fire him. Well, that would have been better, but that's not good enough. Here's what I would hope that I would have done in Christopher Wray's place. And I think I probably would have. I can't think of a time that I've actually backed down from a fight that needed to be fought. And this one needs to be fought. The integrity of the FBI is at stake about whether Trump's going to be allowed to do what he's intending to do, as is signaled by his nominating this Kash Patel. I mean, he hasn't nominated him yet, but this is the guy that's going to be in Christopher Wray's chair if everybody buckles under to Trump, which it looks like they're going to do. The Senate Republicans look like they're going to just fold for him. I did a video last week wondering whether there's grounds for hope, but no. Joni Ernst has come around to Pete Hegseth. It looks like she's going to go along with Pete Hegseth, when that's just absurd. They're not going to stand and fight. What's with this country? I mean, was it always thus that people just backed away from a fight that needed to be fought? Kash Patel at the head of the FBI essentially weaponizes uh, a really powerful force to ruin people's lives and to ruin them for completely political purposes, having nothing to do with the actual intended function of the FBI. And the 10-year term was called for, written into law, I think, in 1976 in the wake of Watergate, as a way of isolating it from political pressures. Why did Christopher Wray surrender? But anyway, not surrendering, but fighting. And if I were in that position, I hope that I would have done, not only required him to fight me, but to be very public about talking about what's going on. To make it can't be normalized and accepted that our democracy is going to be demolished by this guy. We should make him pay for every inch he gets. And the payment would have been from Christopher Wray to get up and talk to the country as many times as it required. Something like, the FBI director is not supposed to be fired except for cause. So, Mr. President, what's the cause here? And this is a way you can bring in your only complaint is I did my job. I did the job I'm supposed to do for the American people and to preserve the constitutional order that you took an oath also to protect and defend. So what's the cause? This is not a legitimate, you have the legal authority to replace me, but you have signaled that you are trying to destroy what you took an oath to protect and defend, because I am keeping my oath to protect and defend the rule of law. That's what, stand and fight. Now, who do we have that's got what you'd want to have in a guy who's going to stand and fight? I mean, I think of all the heroes that we in American culture have had about the movies where we identify with a guy who stands and fights. Right away, I think of High Noon and the Gary Cooper figure. Well, he didn't fight with words. He didn't stand up and deliver speeches. Well, he did. I guess they're in the church. But basically, that was a gunfight. And we've had people like John Wayne play figures who will stand and fight. They will not. John Wayne would never. The characters that John Wayne played would never have done what Christopher Wray did yesterday. Jimmy Stewart in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Now there's a guy who did it in a speech, and he called Americans to the better angels of their nature, fighting against something very corrupt, standing there on the Senate floor until he could hardly speak anymore. We have lots of heroes who have stood and fought in a variety of ways. What would that look like today? And who do we have who has the kind of voice that you want to score the kinds of points that need to be scored in order to move the American people away from the terrible state that they were in, to make this disastrous, catastrophic choice to give this guy the powers of the presidency? We really need to contemplate the enormity of the fact that after everything he's shown, the American people made this choice. Which brings me back also to this Bulwark thing. He talks about the state of mind of the American people. And indeed, there is something really profoundly wrong in it. But there's also a human reality being shown here that people are angry. He says they don't want progress. They want punishment. So they don't vote for Kamala Harris, who's providing a positive vision of an American future. But instead, they voted for a guy who offers nothing but dominating and wounding people that they're angry with. How angry? Well, that brings us to the CEO that got murdered, and all the things that have been reported about things that people said, and the waves of outrage that almost congratulating the guy. And it turns out that he's part of he's the CEO of a healthcare company. A private healthcare system has got a lot of sickness, and he was the head of, I guess, the worst one. People have been trying to think about, how do we relate to that? Well, the fact is that people are angry. And the fact is that people are angry for a good reason. We're the only population among the advanced industrial democracies in which citizens have to worry about the kinds of healthcare catastrophes, financial catastrophes that Americans have to. Everybody else, in Western Europe and Canada and Australia, everybody else has got decent coverage that they can count on. And this guy was the head of a company which exists and gets away with denying people health care to enrich itself. And why is that? Well, it's because the Republican Party has really prevented us from addressing the healthcare issue in the optimal way. I mean, we can look at the history of how the Republicans dealt with healthcare reform when it was crystal clear that we had a national crisis, that the country is being bankrupted by, we're paying more than twice as much as everybody else, and we rank 27th or something in the world. We deliver much less and we pay much more, and it was damaging the economy and was damaging families all across America, and the Republicans did absolutely nothing except try to obstruct solving an obvious problem. Truly disgraceful behavior that the Democrats never called out the way they should have. What's with this country? Why can't anybody fight? It was indefensible what they did in the face of a real national crisis over health care, to just try to prevent it from passing and then try, millions of times to repeal it. Indefensible. A real national problem. And yet, I bet you that a lot of those people who celebrated the assassination of the CEO voted for Trump and for the Republican Party. I'm just betting this. I don't have any information about this. But my sense is that the kind of people who are most enjoyed the revenge, well, we know which side is into revenge. So they vote for the Republican Party that is the cause of the situation that they are enraged about, rightfully enraged, but then it's kind of crazy or a complete lack of understanding of what's going on that you then would go out and vote for the Donald Trump, who tried to end Obamacare, that got 20 million people some decent coverage at an affordable price. There's stuff that's wrong here. The rage of the American people that celebrated the assassination of a guy who's an ugly part of a political failure picture about healthcare in America. Legitimate rage. And yet, nobody has directed their rage successfully at the right place. Now, people were spending a lot of time debating. The governor of of Pennsylvania got up and delivered his usual good speech, but he simplified the moral issue involved here. The question was presented to be, can we celebrate this assassination? No. In a civil society, said, what's his name, Shapiro, in a civil society, we don't let people take the law into their own hands. We don't let people commit murder because they had an opinion. We abide by the rule of law, and that is the way we want it to be. That is the way, I would say, overwhelmingly in American history, with the exception of laws that tolerated racial oppression and stuff like that. But for we've basically had a better world than we would have if we authorized, gave permission, in a sense, to people like this assassin to do their thing. No, we do a lot better, even though it's not perfect. We do a lot better to allow the rule of law. But then, to me, what I immediately thought of when I heard about this assassination, I thought about the 37 movie about the adventures of Robin Hood, starring Errol Flynn. Wonderful movie of kind. And the Robin Hood story is, it's even deeply ingrained in our culture. Rob from the rich and give to the poor is the Robin Hood story. The Normans who have conquered England a century and a half ago are terribly exploiting the Anglo-Saxon natives that they've subjugated in this feudal order, where the power is in the hands of the likes of Prince John and his sheriff of Nottingham, and the share of the wealth that they seize from these people who are generating the economy of the country is way beyond anything legitimate, and impoverishes the people. In that context, we Americans celebrate the hero who robs the treasure of Prince John, killing people in the process. This is not Robin Hood's war against Prince John, which was not authorized by any constitutional process. He's taken the law into his own hands, and he's our hero. So what we see is that there's a spectrum about unjust society versus just society. And at some place along, as you get further and further toward unjust, it begins to be heroic, not criminal, to take the law into your own hands and to attack the oppressive force. How many times have you identified with resistance forces that were knocking off Nazis in occupied France, or Holland, or Norway? Well, the Trump power is moving us toward the position of being ruled by Prince John, or by the Nazi commandant, or whatever the nature of the power structure is. At the other end, there's progressively more just societies where the rule of law is not the rule of law applied to oppress by the tyrant, which is what we're talking about with the FBI. The rule of law are is the structure by which we've decided that this is how conflicts will be resolved. And it's really quite a wonderful thing as it moves toward justice. And we don't want people doing what this guy did with the CEO. But exactly where we are on that spectrum needs to be determined. Well, our healthcare situation has a lot of injustice in it, and it is at least possible to see a piece of justice. But I mean, even if we say, as I would, we don't want that, particularly at a time when it's really the oppressor who's been wielding political violence. We don't want to see if we can slide from here into an outright, a war that's fought with weapons, guerrilla warfare or assassinations, uprisings. We don't want to get things ugly. So I'm pretty clear. I don't want this guy doing what he did. But it calls attention to the rage in the American people that is righteous, just like Robin Hood's. And then we need a Democratic Party. We need a liberal America. We need a pro-democracy force that's able to fight the injustice that exists in the appropriate political way. We shouldn't have this healthcare system. The Republicans shouldn't have gotten away with their treatment of Obama over Obamacare. Clearly, it was called for both parties to work together to come up with the best possible solution to an obvious national problem where we were wasting $1 or $2 trillion a year and getting substandard results for it, with more Americans dying, more families being ruined, where we could look at other countries like France and Switzerland that were doing it so much better for so much less. And yet the Republican Party just tried to obstruct and then tried to repeal. And they never paid a price for it. Where's the fight? If you go on my website, abetterhumanstory.org, you'll see that one of the windows on the sides is a portal that goes into something called Press the Battle. Back in 2014, I was just screaming at the top of my lungs, press the battle. The people on the other side have been behaving disgracefully and increasingly for the last 30 years since Rush Limbaugh and Newt Gingrich. Press the battle. Denounce it. Find a way to denounce it. So we end up in 2024 with Americans so caught up in their rage of their sense that this isn't right, that it's true. Americans don't want progress. They voted for a leader and a political party in 2024 that offered zero about how to make life better for Americans. Meanwhile, Kamala's got these positive visions, which are very plausible. I mean, we could have made progress, but they are so steeped in their anger that they want punishment for their enemies or who they think are their enemies. And that's because we never sold the real picture to them. It's the Republican Party that you should be angry with because they're the ones that blocked our solving this problem. So you wouldn't have to worry about a company like UnitedHealthCare. I mean, whenever you set things up, in an unprotected way, like capitalism and healthcare, you're going to get some broken, ugly stuff. I mean, that's not the problem. That's the result of the fact that we didn't solve the problem. And the Democrats tried to solve the problem. The Republicans tried to prevent our solving for the problem. Yet, why didn't the Democrats ever point out how indefensible the Republicans were being? At every juncture, it is possible to stand up and speak the truth and direct the anger of the American people at the right targets. And to do that, you have to be willing to express some kind of powerful feeling of the kind that expresses for people what they need to have expressed, that apparently this assassin expressed by killing the guy. That's not the way, but it needs to be expressed. Is there a Democrat around here on the stage that would vent in a constructive and truthful way what this assassin apparently vented for a lot of Americans? This guy, JVL on Bulwark, he says, what does it take to win elections? And he's saying demagoguery, basically. He says, imagine it's 2028 and we have a Democratic presidential candidate formulating a health care plan. He has two options. One, propose increasing access and coverage. That's the positive vision. His whole thing has been that the Democrats have been offering positive visions, and the American people aren't buying it. They're into punishment. They want to strike back. America has changed, and the majority of voters are no longer motivated by wanting progress for themselves. Instead, they're motivated primarily by anger that outgroups the people they do not like might be succeeding or getting some sort of benefits. And he goes through a whole lot of things to indicate that that is what the Republican Party has been selling, and that's what the people are buying. And I'm suggesting that they've been cultivating this anger, and there is some legitimate anger, but it's misdirected. But anyway, he says, and the second option, attack health insurance companies, their CEOs and oligarchs, and promise to punish these malefactors. No, they're not the problem. They're the symptom of the problem. How do you win elections? You help the American people to see that this whole problem with UnitedHealthCare and the whole thing is because the Republican Party have been an obstacle to giving Americans the kind of healthcare system that they would want, that they deserve, the kind of thing that allows the French to get a lot of security and good healthcare for half the cost that we're paying. Show the Republican Party for exactly what it is. It's not demagoguery to speak the truth. There are things legitimately to be angry at. Chris Wray is an instance of being at the point of contact where injustice is working to destroy justice. A legitimate FBI that follows the rule of law and all that. That's America's best shot at justice. We know the history. It's not all it's ever been, but it's what we got. And overall, since J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI has been a force that helps make America more just. Wray represents that. His being replaced by Kash Patel represents the victory of injustice over justice. There is something to be angry here about. This is a sacred institution, sacred in the sense that justice is sacred. We want it to be as good and pure and just as it can be, which is why they passed that law about 10-year terms. They don't want something like what's happening to happen. And Christopher Wray backs down rather than helping the American people to see that this is the thing to be angry about in this instance. In this instance, we don't want Prince John being the commander of a sheriff in Nottingham, oppressing and tyrannizing these Anglo-Saxon serfs. That's something that we want our heroes to fight to protect. Robin Hood, in this instance, should have been Christopher Wray. So who's going to stand up and wage this fight the way in a way that taps into this desire of Americans for punishment, that they can't get to the positive vision yet because the Democratic Party, liberal America, the side that's been the pro-democracy side, has not been able to vent their feelings in an effective way, partly because they haven't shown what the proper object of the anger is, and partly because their whole manner does not bespeak what we always ask our heroes to do when they go out into the street to fight against evil. Why aren't we getting the courage manifested by a Christopher Wray or a Jeff Bezos or the owner of the Los Angeles Times or these other CEOs on Wall Street who are afraid of this president and therefore would not come out individually exposing themselves to this vindictive tyrant? Many people have talked about the Timothy Snyder, whom I greatly admire, and his first commandment, which is don't obey in advance. And all these cases are people. Christopher Wray that was brought up. I heard several times yesterday about Christopher Wray resigning instead of making a fight out of it. But nobody called for it to be a fight, by the way. My Blumenthal, he said he should have made Trump fire him, but that's not enough. Other people said he should have made Trump fire him, but I say that's not enough. You fight the fight, you press the battle. The contrast between what this Trumpian force represents and basic American values is so stark. I thought it was working when Kamala fought the fight in a beautiful way. I thought it was working. There was the warning signs of how can it be this close? There's something going on in the American people that nobody felt like they understood. How can it be this close? I mean, look at this guy. Look at all the indictments and the sexual misconduct and all the lying and all the everything you could ask for in ugliness he provided. And she was providing this radiant, how could it be this close? Well, it turned out to be even closer. He came out on top. But that was the warning. There was something going on in the American people that was really kind of ugly and broken, that faced with this choice. Well, part of the answer to this, and I've been trying to provide other parts of part of the answer is that Americans have looked in vain into politics to get the fight that they feel in their gut that they need. And part of that's legitimate, and part of it is because the right-wing propagandists have fanned their resentments and prejudices and all that. So the amount of anger that's out there has been increased by all those millions that listen to Rush Limbaugh or watch Fox News. So there's all that anger, but some of it is legitimate, and the legitimate part is what's looked in vain for the political champions out there on the battlefield, going toe to toe. So I don't want to see any more surrendering. I want to see some people rising on the political stage that will be the Gary Cooper or John Wayne or Jimmy Stewart hero that gives expression to what apparently the American people are marinated in, where a guy who promises to make continual war against people you've been manipulated into it being enraged at gets your vote. And somebody who promises we actually can move the world forward this way, this guy is going to dismantle what's good about the world. We could build on it. We could pass things in the law that would make things better. We can create programs. We can provide funding. We can make choices as a people for a better future. Well, apparently people aren't ready for that quite yet. It could be combined, however, with a kind of attack that made people right at an emotional level, will enlist people's celebratory feelings of, yes, you are venting our rage, not as a demagogue, but as a political leader in dark times. And these are dark times. And we can't fight this darkness with just one hand tied behind our back, or in just mild tones, or in a way that doesn't express things that obviously people feel a need to have their political heroes express, but not for destructive purposes that are based on lies, but for constructive purposes based on good, truthful, moral truth-telling by a voice that's willing to do combat against evil. You don't have to choose between virtue and strength. The challenge is to make sure that they are fully entwined with one another. That's the challenge that human civilization always faces. Is power going to be combined with goodness? The answer too often is not. America was a big step forward in having goodness, the will of the people, as an approximation, combined with power, the consent of the governed. But there's always a tendency to lose that if we don't have what it takes to maintain it. Christopher Wray didn't have what it takes. I don't know why. Is it fear? Does he not see that his job was to defend justice, which is under attack in a different way? I don't know. But we need some heroes. Thanks. If you would be so kind as to support, subscribe, otherwise encourage, that would be encouraging. If you want to see an integrated picture of a lot of stuff about what our situation is as Americans at one level, but more fundamentally as human beings, the civilization-making creatures on this planet, please go to my website, abetterhumanstory.org. You'll find there something which I think puts some important realities about our situation into a fundamentally different light. And that's my mission, is to try to get that out there. So thank you for listening. Hope this didn't go on too long. Weaving things together is important. I mean, I could do one piece at a time, and maybe I will still that. But seeing how these things are interconnected is really crucial to understanding that the nature of the forces at work. Making the connection between the murder of the CEO and what the Republicans did when Obama tried to pass health care, and what Christopher Reeves, yeah, poor guy, Christopher Wray did in surrendering yesterday, that they're all part of the same picture. And I think they point toward the task we face, which is to use the truth to press the battle, find some effective way of bringing the American people away from the fascistic venting of their anger toward a righteous and constructive venting of their anger. Constructive in that they will hand power to the party that will see to it that we make progress instead of regress back into the age of Prince John, and have to fight not with the voice of a good democratic hero, but with the violence of Robin Hood and his merry men, who killed a lot of Prince John's men in trying to restore justice to England. Thanks. Bye-bye.